I spent my whole life thinking I was in control, that I knew how the system worked, how to bend the rules and come out clean. But one mistake, one wrong move, sent everything crashing down faster than I ever thought possible. I looked into her eyes that day, expecting fear. Instead, I saw something far worse, certainty. The kind that tells you your fate is already sealed. Want to know how I ended up here? Well, let's start from the beginning. All right, let me set the stage for you. Imagine a rundown police precinct that smells like burnt coffee, old sweat, and something that's definitely not legally edible. That's Precinct 14, the kind of place where bad decisions are made daily, and justice is just a word people pretend to care about. Now, meet Detective Douglas Doug Miller, 42, the kind of guy who thinks serving and protecting means getting free food at diners and harassing anyone who doesn't look like him. He's built like a truck that's been through too many car washes, big bloated and barely holding together. His partner? Officer Bill Stanton, 38, a guy whose greatest intellectual achievement was figuring out how to spell his own name on official reports. They're not just bad cops. They're the kind of bad cops that make the bad cops look good. And today? Today was just another day of unchecked power, low-effort policing, and zero consequences. At least that's what they thought. Power trip on Main Street. Doug and Bill were parked in their squad car, stuffing their faces with donuts so dry they could double as insulation. It was one of those slow days where they just sat back and watched the world exist, which for them meant looking for someone they could mess with. That's when she walked by. A woman, black, mid-30s, walking with confidence, dressed in a sleek navy suit, holding a leather briefcase like she owned the whole street. Doug squinted. Well. Look at Miss Wall Street over here. Bill snorted, wiping powdered sugar off his pants. Yeah, walking like she pays our salaries or something. Guess someone forgot who really runs things around here. Doug cracked his knuckles, stretching like he had just been waiting for something like this to happen. Let's remind her. The squad car lurched forward, tires screeching slightly as it cut across the sidewalk. Pedestrians jumped back, startled. The woman? She didn't even flinch. She just stopped, adjusted her briefcase, and turned her gaze toward them. Cold, unbothered, like she had seen this before. Doug and Bill stepped out, putting on their best tough cop routine, chest puffed, hands on belts, like they were about to arrest a war criminal. Doug took the lead. Ma'am, stop right there. We need to see some ID. She raised an eyebrow. And why is that, officer? Doug glanced at Bill, who just shrugged like an excited intern. We got a report about a suspicious individual matching your description. The woman tilted her head, her expression as unimpressed as humanly possible. And what exactly is my description? Doug opened his mouth, then stopped. Because for once in his career, he actually had to think. Bill, always ready to make a bad situation worse, stepped in. You know, acting all high and mighty, like you don't belong here. That's when she smiled. Not a normal smile, not a ha-ha, you guys are ridiculous smile. No, this was the kind of smile that people give when they already know they've won. So, walking with confidence is now a crime? Doug gritted his teeth, already annoyed that she wasn't scared. Look, lady, you're acting real difficult. Just show us your ID and we won't have any problems. She took a deep breath and, very deliberately, reached into her blazer. Doug's hand instantly went to his belt, but all she pulled out was a small, black device. Recording. Doug's brain short-circuited. Bill froze. For a split second, the air crackled with tension. Excuse me, Doug finally said, his voice tight. She held up the small camera, calm as ever. I'm recording this interaction. You just stopped me without probable cause, and you're escalating the situation without justification. Bill's face turned an impressive shade of red. Lady, turn that thing off, or what? What? She interrupted, tilting her head. You're going to make up charges? Get aggressive? Do something really, really stupid? Doug and Bill exchanged glances, and for the first time, it looked like something finally clicked in their heads. This wasn't going how they expected. They had stopped plenty of people before, but none of them ever came prepared. Doug stepped forward, trying to regain control. Turn it off, now! The woman didn't move. No. One simple word. That's all it took. Doug lunged, grabbing her wrist, twisting it just enough to make her drop the camera. It clattered onto the pavement. Oops, Doug smirked. Now, are you going to be cooperative or do we have to make this difficult? The woman stared at him, her expression unreadable. And then very quietly she said, "Congratulations, officer, you just committed assault on a federal judge." Silence. Doug and Bill froze. A beat passed, then another. Then Bill laughed. A short, nervous, awkward sound. "Lady, please. A judge on this street, walking around like that? Come on." The woman just kept looking at them, not saying a word. And that's when Doug felt it. That sinking feeling. The one where your stomach turns cold, where your brain starts putting the pieces together way too late. Bill wasn't getting it yet. Doug? Doug was starting to get it. And for the first time today, he was not in control. Doug always thought of himself as a survivor. He wasn't the smartest or the fastest, but he knew how to get out of trouble. That was his whole career, pushing limits, bending rules, never facing consequences. Until now. Because as he walked into Precinct 14, dragging that woman behind him in cuffs, every single person in the station froze. Not the usual, someone brought in a tough case kind of frozen. No, this was the, we just saw a ghost and it's holding our resignation letters kind of frozen. Doug felt the tension immediately, but Bill? Still completely clueless. Why is everyone looking at us like that? Before Doug could answer, the door to Captain Crosby's office slammed open. Now, Crosby wasn't just a captain. He was the kind of guy who could make fully grown men regret every life decision with just one look. Built like a brick wall, voice like a wrecking ball, and patience long gone. And right now, he looked like he was about to explode. "Miller, Stanton, my office now," Doug swallowed. Bill shrugged. "Guess someone woke up on the wrong side of now." They barely had time to unclip their belts before they were dragged inside. "You two just signed your own warrants." Crosby paced behind his desk like a man who had just discovered his retirement fund had been stolen. His face? A full shade of red. "What the hell did you two idiots do?" Bill blinked. Arrested a woman?" Doug closed his eyes. Oh no. Crosby didn't even sit down. He just slammed a folder onto his desk. Doug and Bill leaned in, and there it was. Her face, her title, her power. Crosby's voice was practically vibrating. "Meet Judge Andrea Collins, federal judge, and the woman you two morons just threw in a holding cell." Doug's stomach turned to ice. Bill chuckled awkwardly. "Wait, judge like actual judge?" Crosby's stare could have stopped a heart. "Oh, not just a judge. She's pressing charges. And guess who's going to be presiding over the case?" Bill still didn't get it. Doug? Doug got it, and for the first time in his entire career, he had nowhere to run. Doug had never felt this kind of silence before. Not the peaceful kind, not the relaxing kind. No, this was the, you just realized you're in serious trouble, but it's too late to fix it, kind. The kind of silence that wraps around your throat and doesn't let go. And right now, Doug and Bill were drowning in it. Welcome to the other side of the courtroom. 1 week later, Doug had spent his entire life walking into courtrooms like he owned the place. He'd sat in the back, leaned on the witness stand, maybe even tossed in a few sarcastic remarks while watching cases fall apart in front of him. But today, Doug wasn't sitting in his usual spot. Today, he was the one on trial. And the worst part? The judge overseeing the case was the same woman he had thrown in cuffs, Judge Andrea Collins. Doug sat at the defendant's table, stiff as a board, while Bill fidgeted like a kid who just realized he forgot to do his homework. "Dude, this is not happening," Bill whispered, eyes darting across the packed courtroom. Doug didn't answer. His brain was too busy trying to process the fact that everything had flipped upside down. The bailiff stood up. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Andrea Collins." Doug couldn't move. He felt like his body just disconnected from his brain. Because there she was, the woman they had mocked, arrested, and dragged into their station like she was just another case number. And now she was about to decide their fate. She took her seat, adjusted her robe, and looked directly at them. "Officers Miller and Stanton," she said. Her voice smooth, calm, but carrying the weight of a hammer about to drop. "You stand accused of unlawful arrest, misconduct, and abuse of power. How do you plead?" Doug felt his mouth go dry. Bill? Bill opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, like his brain had just encountered a critical error. Their lawyer, a shaky public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, leaned forward. Your Honor, my clients plead not guilty. Judge Collins raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Before you continue, I want to remind you that this court has security footage from the police precinct, body cam footage from the officers, and multiple witness testimonies. Doug's heart sank. Bill's legs started bouncing uncontrollably. This wasn't a normal trial. This was an execution on a legal level. Let's talk about that arrest, shall we? Judge Collins pulled out a folder and opened it. Now, let's go over the facts. You stopped me without probable cause. You demanded ID without justification. And when I questioned you, you escalated the situation, forcibly detained me, and physically restrained me without cause. Bill, in full panic mode, leaned over to Doug. Dude, what do we do? Doug didn't answer. Because he knew the truth. There was no getting out of this. Judge Collins continued. And of course, let's not forget the moment you decided to mock me while throwing me in a holding cell. She picked up a remote and clicked play on the courtroom screen. The footage rolled. Doug and Bill watched their own downfall in real time. The squad car footage. Doug grabbing her wrist. Bill laughing. Doug shoving her against the car. Their words. Loud, clear, undeniable. Bill's voice echoed through the speakers. That's what happens when you don't respect authority, huh? Doug closed his eyes. It was over. The verdict. The trial didn't last long. How could it? The evidence was all there. Doug and Bill weren't walking away from this. Judge Collins sat back, took a long pause, then spoke. After reviewing the evidence, it is clear that Officers Miller and Stanton violated multiple ethical and legal standards. As such, this court rules in favor of the prosecution. Doug felt like the floor had just dropped out from under him. Bill? He looked like a deer caught in stadium lights. Judge Collins wasn't done. Officers Miller and Stanton, effective immediately, you are both stripped of your positions in law enforcement and will face further internal investigations regarding past misconduct. The courtroom exploded. Some officers in the crowd muttered under their breath. Some people smiled. Others, they just shook their heads, like they had seen this coming a long time ago. Doug? Doug just sat there, still, silent, because for the first time in his life, there were no shortcuts, no easy ways out, no second chances, just the cold, undeniable truth. And the worst part? He had done it to himself. What would you do? If you were in Doug's place, what would you have done differently? Would you have let your ego take control? Or would you have taken a second to think before making a mistake that could ruin your life? Have you or someone you know ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion matters. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and let's talk about it. This story isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder. A reminder of why accountability matters, why power should never be abused, and why standing up against injustice makes the world a better place. Your voice matters. Your perspective matters. Your opinion has power. Let's keep the conversation going.